Picture this. You've been doing everything they told you to do. You cut back. You said no to things. You packed lunch instead of buying it. You skipped the vacation. You watched your account balance inch upward, month by month, slowly but steadily. And there was something genuinely satisfying about that. It felt responsible. It felt like progress. And then one day you sit down, look at the number, and realize something quietly devastating. You've been saving for 3 years, maybe 5, and your financial life looks almost exactly the same. Not worse, but not meaningfully better either. The number in the account is higher, yes, but the gap between where you are and where you actually want to be, it hasn't moved the way you thought it would. And you start to wonder, what am I missing? Am I doing something wrong? Or is this just it? But here's what nobody tells you clearly enough. Saving money is not the same thing as building wealth. And the difference between those two ideas is costing a lot of people years, sometimes decades, of financial progress they can never get back. Hi, my name is Alpha. And in this video, we're going to break down why saving money alone, no matter how disciplined you are, is quietly working against you in ways you might not have noticed yet, and what you can actually do to change the trajectory. Because this isn't about saving less. It's about understanding what saving alone can and cannot do, and building a fuller picture around it. Let me be honest about something first. The advice to save money is not wrong. Saving is the foundation. Without it, nothing else works. An emergency fund, a cushion, a buffer against the chaos of life. That stuff is real, and it matters deeply. I'm not here to tell you saving is a mistake. But here's what most financial culture gets wrong. It stops at saving. It treats saving as the destination rather than the starting line. And when you treat saving as the goal, you end up optimizing for the wrong thing. Think about where most of the "be better with money" messaging comes from. It's almost always framed around spending less. Cut the subscriptions. Make coffee at home. Don't buy the thing. And the implied promise underneath all of it is, if you just restrain yourself enough, financial security will follow. But restraint alone has a ceiling, a hard one. There's only so much you can cut before you're living a life that feels like punishment. And there's only so much you can save before the math stops working in your favor. Because the place most people keep their savings is quietly, steadily losing value every single year. And most people don't realize it's happening. Here's the thing that changes everything once you really understand it. Money sitting still is not neutral. It's moving. Just backwards. This is what inflation does. Every year, the general cost of things goes up. Historically, somewhere around 2 to 3% annually. Sometimes more. Which means that every year, the purchasing power of your saved money goes down by roughly that same amount. $1,000 today doesn't buy what $1,000 bought 5 years ago. And it won't buy what $1,000 buys 5 years from now. So if you have money sitting in a regular savings account earning 0.5% or nothing, you are technically saving, but you are economically falling behind. Slowly, quietly, without any dramatic event to point to. Just the slow erosion of value, year after year, while the balance looks fine on the surface. That's not a crisis, but it is a leak. And leaks, given enough time, are how boats sink. Now let me show you what the other path looks like, and I want to be concrete, because this is where the gap becomes undeniable. Imagine 2 people, let's call them Jordan and Casey. Both are 30 years old, both managed to set aside $400 a month, same income, same discipline, same starting point. Jordan keeps that money in a savings account. Over 30 years, assuming a 1% average annual return, Jordan ends up with around $168,000. Not nothing. That's real money. That represents real sacrifice and real consistency. Casey invests that same $400 a month in a diversified index fund. Nothing exotic, nothing complicated, just the broad market, and earns an average 7% annual return over the same 30 years. Casey ends up with around $480,000. Same discipline, same $400 a month, a $300,000 difference. Not because Casey worked harder or earned more or was luckier, because of where the money was placed and how it was allowed to grow. That gap is compound interest, and it is the closest thing to a financial superpower that actually exists for regular people. Here's how it works in plain terms. In the early years, you're earning returns on your original money. But over time, you start earning returns on your returns. The growth starts growing, and the longer it runs, the faster that acceleration becomes. The last 10 years of a 30-year investment journey typically generate more wealth than the first 20 combined. Which is why time is the variable that matters most. Not how much you earn, not how sophisticated your strategy is, time. And every year spent keeping money purely in savings instead of allowing it to work is a year of compounding you can never recover. Now, I want to name something here because I know what's coming up for some people watching this. Investing feels scary. It feels like gambling. It feels like something that requires expertise you don't have, or a level of confidence in the future that seems naive given everything going on in the world. Those feelings are completely valid, and they're also worth examining. The fear around investing comes largely from a misunderstanding of what long-term investing actually is. Watching the market day to day looks like chaos. Prices moving up and down with no apparent logic, news causing dramatic swings, everything feeling unstable. And if that short-term noise is your frame of reference, of course it feels like gambling. But zoom out 30 years. Look at the historical trajectory of broadly diversified markets over multi-decade periods. The picture is completely different, not smooth, not without painful dips, but directionally clear. Long-term investing in the broad market has never, over any 30-year period in modern history, resulted in a loss. That doesn't guarantee future results, nothing does, but it reframes what the actual risk profile looks like. The risk of investing is not that you will lose everything. The risk of not investing is that you will save diligently for decades and arrive somewhere far short of where you could have been. And one more thing worth sitting with. The people who never invest often don't think of themselves as making a financial decision. They think of themselves as simply not doing something, staying safe, staying out of it. But that is a decision. Keeping money in a low-yield account while inflation runs is a decision with real financial consequences. It just doesn't look like one, because it's invisible and passive. Inaction is still a choice. It just doesn't announce itself. Here's the shift I want you to walk away with. Saving is protection. Investing is participation. You need both, but they do completely different jobs. Saving protects you from the short term, the car breaking down, the job loss, the unexpected medical bill. It keeps you from going backward. That is genuinely important and should not be skipped. But investing is how you move forward. It's how you participate in economic growth rather than just watching it happen. It's how your money starts working alongside you instead of just sitting on the bench. The mental shift is this. Stop thinking of your savings account as the finish line and start thinking of it as the locker room. You gear up there, you build your foundation there, and then, once that foundation is in place, you step onto the actual field. Most financial advisors suggest having 3 to 6 months of living expenses in accessible savings before investing. Not because investing is dangerous, but because having that cushion means you never have to sell your investments at a bad time just because life surprised you. The cushion protects the long game. Once that cushion exists, every dollar you park beyond it in a low-yield account is a dollar that could be growing. So what does this look like in practice? Because I want this to feel actionable, not just conceptually interesting. First, if you don't have an emergency fund yet, 3 to 6 months of expenses, that is the priority before anything else. This is not optional, and it's not something to rush past. Build it, name it something that reminds you what it's for, and leave it alone. That account exists to absorb shocks, not to grow. Accept that, and don't feel bad about the low interest rate. Once that cushion is in place, shift your mindset around any additional savings. Ask yourself, does this money need to be liquid in the next 5 years? If the answer is no, it should probably be working harder than a savings account allows. For most people, the most accessible entry point is a tax-advantaged retirement account, the kind your employer might offer, or one you can open independently. The tax benefits alone make these accounts significantly more efficient than a regular brokerage, and contributing consistently over time, even small amounts, is how the compounding math starts to work in your favor. If investing still feels overwhelming, start with one decision. Pick a simple, low-cost index fund that tracks the broad market and set up an automatic monthly contribution. You don't need to pick stocks. You don't need to follow financial news. You don't need to be an expert. A diversified index fund is how millions of completely ordinary people have quietly built real wealth over time by doing almost nothing complicated. The key word is consistent. Not perfect, not maximized. Consistent. Showing up every month automatically, regardless of whether the market is up or down. That consistency, over time, is what builds the outcome. There's something I want to say before we close, because I think it gets lost in most financial conversations. The reason so many people stay stuck in save-only mode is not ignorance, it's not laziness. It's a kind of financial anxiety that makes the familiar feel safe, even when the familiar isn't actually working. Keeping money in savings feels controllable. Investing feels like surrender to something uncertain. But here's what I've come to understand. Real financial security isn't built by avoiding uncertainty. It's built by participating thoughtfully in it, choosing carefully, starting small, building slowly, trusting the long arc of the thing rather than reacting to every short-term fluctuation. The people who end up financially stable, not the ones who got lucky, not the ones born into wealth, but the regular people who genuinely changed their trajectory. They didn't do anything exotic. They just understood that saving was the floor, not the ceiling. And they built upward from there. You don't have to figure all of this out at once. You don't have to start with perfect clarity or a large amount. You just have to start with something small, consistent, and intentional. And then let time do the rest of the heavy lifting. Progress over perfection, always. And the version of you who understands the difference between saving and building, they're already ahead of most people. Because most people never stop to ask the question,